What's up, everybody? Dan and Ben here for another webinar. We'll be reviewing day one of the WSOP Final Table. Then the first 20 or so minutes will be available to you on the YouTube channel. And for the rest of the webinar, it's available on GTO Lab under the Pro Subscription. We won't go in chronological order because we don't know how many hands we'll get through, and we want to do the fun ones first. Before we start, do you have much experience with anyone remaining at the table? At the current table?
Not really. I feel like years ago I used to have a bit more experience with Kenny, but haven't played him much recently. I think I've played once with Mizraki and a couple of times with Leo, and I think that's it. You?
Yeah, that's kind of exactly where I'm at as well. I think I've played once with the grinder in the Bahamas, I would guess it would have been. And then Kenny, I think I've played a lot with him like a decade ago at this point. And
Yeah.
then we've crossed paths a little bit more recently, but intermittently. And I'm not sure where his current game is at. In my experience, he's just always been kind of good and solid and someone that knew their own strengths.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had him as someone who was good and like will push things. Um, as in he's willing to push things pretty hard if he thinks he has an edge on people and will like push opening ranges, but is good at poker and doesn't just like do absurd things post or anything.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. So this first hand with five left, a bit of a, well, let's just play through the hand and kind of go through all the decision nodes. Not much to say about the open. Sizing down, I think, makes sense with the 18 big blind stack in the big blind and the chip leader being in small blind. What are your thoughts on this pocket sevens 3-bet?
You think it's way probably more out of line than it is because we're used to just like three betting. A lot of people will just kind of three bet pocket pairs they want to get in and don't three bet the other ones at all. I think often some of these small ones can get in at really low frequencies because they actually do a pretty good job, especially if someone's opening wide, clearing out overcards. And then when you have deep spots at final tables with very high get in thresholds for post flop, it's like nice to have a hand that can just flop something that actually wants to get stacks in. So often you see in it's like this where these can actually get in at just kind of a couple of percent. So obviously you can't just be doing it all the time. But EV wise, I don't actually think it's a misstep or anything. Uh, Obviously, it depends on what his thoughts are. And if he's trying to get it in, I think like getting it in would be a misstep.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Like, I think you get 4-bet, a little bit less and with a more favorable range than you would under less ICM pressure. And obviously, since we're starting with this hand, we haven't seen how Kenny's been playing, but he definitely hasn't been too tight to open. If anything, it's like the other way around. So if he's going to be opening stuff like offsuit nine, like offsuit jack nine sort of
Yeah.
hands, or suited 8x hands, it does a nice job of just clearing out the two overcards.
Yeah, and I think there was actually a hand earlier at the final table where he opened Queen Jack suited quite deep and Dunaway, I think it was Dunaway three bet 7-3 suited for like a quite smaller size than this. And Kenny just pitched the Queen Jack suited in a spot that I thought it was probably, it was going to be very close. So I
Yeah.
think that if you have this combination of people opening a little wide, but then respecting three bets a little too much, some of these hands are just completely fine too, and it just looks strange because you're not actually trying to get it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the standard play is just hold there and like maybe fold could be fine as well. I think fold could be fine as well. It's not going to make you much money, but it depends like how aggro the people are behind you. And
Yeah, definitely depends on like how Mizrachi's going to be playing the spot as far as squeezing goes.
yeah,
Though I do find that if you look at equilibrium solutions, like the squeeze range tends to be pretty wild at equilibrium if it goes Kenny
yeah,
open, Dunaway flat.
yeah, I agree. I think versus you can always kind of sneak in any of those flats that are mixing. Um,
So this four bet, like a couple of things to talk about. First of all, should he four bet, and then second, sizing. I'll talk about the sizing first, and then we'll kind of work backwards to a decision to four bet. I think that the sizing is bigger than it needs to be for what most of your range wants to accomplish. Obviously, you're going to be four betting some hands that you want to get in, and then you have some bluffs, although your bluffs tend to be there is a polar component to them, but there's also just this linearity component to them as well, just because of how tight the ranges are. I think given how generally polar Dunaway's three betting range should be, obviously here we see a hand that's not very polar, but generally speaking, Dunaway's range won't be containing hands like this. And I think against the polar range, we just want to go smaller. It accomplishes the same things for the value portion of our range and just risks less for bluffing. I don't think it's a particularly expensive mistake, but at the same time, when Mizrachi goes 40 million here, I don't think that he has a four bet folding range against Dunaway, unless you think differently.
this is kind of a range that consists of ace, king, jacks, and maybe something like tens and queen suited. It's just like I tell Kenny that have it, please don't jam.
Right.
And then with Dunaway, I just want to get it in, don't want to shove. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right against Dunaway. Like also, even when things are like you said, the sevens won't be in here that much usually. Um, Hard to know in this spot how often it is, but even when you see people put in hands like sevens or like ace jack suited here, when they're going to be majority flats, often they just fold a lot as well. If you go to like 28 million, people don't actually want to play for stacks, and people aren't. It's not chippy. People aren't like calling and hoping for a good flop. A lot of the time, they're just folding even to a way smaller size. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. The size can be significantly smaller.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So now, should he four bet? Like, I think it would take a very specific, just general read on the three better to think that you shouldn't four bet. Like, it would just have to be that they are very tight and very polar, and also their range doesn't contain enough bluffs. Like I don't think it's a completely wild universe to be in where jacks could be a fold against particular player types, like where if someone's just bluffing something like ace jack off exactly a lot and then don't ever three bet worse than jacks for value and are generally like tight and under bluffing, like yeah, sure, jacks can be a fold, but against most players playing reasonably, I can't see not four betting this hand.
Seems Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it is quite close, is it? And I think that like I would probably be folding tens.
Yeah.
And like it only takes small shifts if Dunaway just had like even like 93 million, where I thought that actually they were going to get in like queens plus and start having much more of a flooding range and not even going to have tens in the three bet ever. Like even here, it's not great, right? If you think that Dunaway is just going to be like, oh, 42 bigs, that's a bit too much to get in tens, I'm going to call. And the three bet is just ace king and queens plus, not enough bluffs. It's already not that fun. Like I don't think this is, and sometimes you don't get it through Kenny. Uh, don't even get to realize all your equity. Like you said, like they're not great blockers against the 3-bet range or against Kenny's like raise fold ranges. I don't even think it's like that fun of a spot near like here. And if he just folded immediately, I wouldn't be like saying anything about it. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, especially like if you're going to go this size,
Yeah, going the size is a little bit kind of like you're committing yourself, but you're doing a thing where you communicate to Dunaway that you're not folding to a 5 bet. And if the 3 bet is queens plus ace king, then it gets you're basically shoving, except not shoving against Kenny is what you're doing.
costing yourself more money against Kenny when he wakes up with something
Yeah.
because you're going to fold. Like I don't know. I honestly would think that it's kind of bottom of range in theory and not making much at all. And if your options are fold in this size, that fold probably becomes better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I actually
Like that
I
would be
didn't
my guess.
consider that angle, but I kind of
Like I think
yeah.
it's just worth not much if you get the option to go to like 27 million or something. And then if you're just force 0 40, it might just like be pure fold. Well, I would expect it to be. That would be my guess. But
Yeah. Okay.
um,
Yeah, I'm on board with everything you said. Okay, so now it gets back to Kenny. He does
yeah,
indeed wake up with something. So this is kind of for a lot of people like an anxiety-inducing spot where the gears kind of stop turning and it's easy to stop thinking coherent thoughts. What's kind of the first question you ask yourself in terms of like approaching this spot, or what is the first step in your thought process here?
I mean, I feel like the first two are probably somewhat conjoined in terms of like I would think that when it's someone like him, not just like a random recreational player who's not aware of sizing, that this is way more likely to be jacks and ace king than actually like kings and aces, where against the player he would likely go smaller. Um, I would ask myself like the confidence I had in that sizing read and whether I had enough chips to make him fold those hands because I think this is kind of a six spot where you might be like, oh, I think he literally has no bluffs and it's just ace king and jacks. I want to get it in against that with that, so much ICM and I've only put in two big blinds. Then you need to ask yourself like, wait, is he going to fold those hands to me?
Right.
Because it also might be a spot where you just get him to fold like 80% of the time because he just has ace king off and jacks and it just looks like you have kings plus and he's just going to like pitch it because it's going to be he's got a good table, an amazing chip stack, and he's going to have to put in an extra 110 million where it just looks like you have kings and he has jacks. So like I would be asking myself those two things first. I went back and forth when I watched this hand and was like pretty unsure. I kind of landed on it's pretty sick, but like fun at all. But you probably want to put it in as Kenny.
Are there any?
Just could shift really quickly. Like yeah,
Yeah.
like if Kenny has like 110, I would say fold and like you know uh, even just like having 200 maybe just like fold because then the risk of being wrong about the sizing read is way worse. But uh,
Yeah, he does kind of have like yeah, the risk of being wrong is worse, but also it's a pretty top heavy tournament, and like he is kind of gambling for the right amount of chips. Just for reference, the total amount of chips in play is just under 600 million. So because there's so much tied up in first and second, like gambling for half the chips in play usually is kind of not great when there's still 5 players at the table. But I think with this payout structure, it's actually not that bad.
yeah, to be way more aggressive than you would in like an online tournament where it's just like very even pay jumps.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how they're getting information or what information they have, but I'm pretty sure it was done away that 3-bet 7-3 suited earlier versus Kenny. And if that is like public information, it changes it because Mizraki might just try and get in tens this way.
Right. Yeah, or just even
He
potentially
queen
just have
suited or
like a
something.
linear bluff, like where he just has, an ace jack suited or even worse sort of hand, and then just makes it like a scary amount, and then Sai calls it off. Basically wanting to shove against the three bet, but then saving himself chips against Kenny.
Kind of thought with all those things that it's really gross and just go with it as Kenny. I can understand not wanting to go with it.
Yeah, that's where I landed on as well. I also think that it's the range is certainly kind of condensed, at least in my mind, to ace king and jacks. Like I'd say with a pretty high degree of confidence that for sure Mizrachi's not going to have aces here. Like he would just want to make it an amount that induces from Dunaway. Even kings is a little bit of a stretch. And then getting it in against ace king is like if Mizrachi does call off ace king, it's obviously kind of fine. You generally just chop. It's not a complete ICM disaster. And then I think jacks is kind of like the one hand that he actually ends up folding. Like if I had to decide which hand is he more
Yeah,
likely to fold, jacks more than ace king for sure, right?
yeah. I think even if the positions are reversed, I know like not really related to this because so much changes, but I even expect if Kenny and Dunaway are reversed in positions but not in chips, he's more likely to like do something sneaky with aces where he's trying to be like not look like aces. But here there's not really much reason to because Kenny's just open, so it doesn't really make sense for him to try and trick anyone because Kenny's opened and the other guy can't be tricked because you're saying you're getting it in.
Right.
So it's really hard for him to actually have aces. It just makes no sense from his point of view. It's like trying to trick you if you have ace king for him to go through the like 15-minute thought process that we've gone through and come to the conclusion that he's got Jackson is folding it. So
Yeah.
I think the sizing read is pretty confident, and I would just put it in and be unhappy if sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing things to trick a guy that's probably opening, I don't
Yeah,
know,
there's just
over
folding
30% of
98% of the
hands.
time. It's like,
So Kenny will eventually, eventually find a fold, which I mean, I get, like we talked about, like I totally get it. Um, I would have a lot. Yeah, I would have a lot more understanding for folding against a slightly smaller size as backwards as that sounds. Although, given how we broke down the hand, I don't think it's even that backwards.
yeah.
Yeah, this fold, especially with how top heavy it is, I can't really get on board. Although at the same time, I do kind of get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you play 10 minutes of poker. You also at a table where it's like I think at least two of the other players are recreationals, and
Yeah,
you have a very good stack, and he might just be like, yeah, like how confident actually am I about all this stuff that we just went through, and like I think these two guys are going to give it away or just like lose to me a bunch of money. I think I'm the best player at the table. It's really hard, and it's just like day 11 of poker, and actually probably day 50 for Kenny if he's been
yeah,
doing it for the series. So it's like you know, it's hard to say anything about when it's probably just like mixing folds at equilibrium anyway.
yeah, for sure. And also one thing that I want to mention in terms, like you were talking about there being probably a couple of recreationals here, and as far as playing for $10 million goes, like it's not every lineup, especially when it comes to the main event. FT is tough in its own way, but for the stakes, it's kind of a really good spot to be in. If you look at what the stack distribution here is, the person that's likely to bust next, most likely to bust next, is obviously the short stack in the big blind.
Yeah,
And if that happens, then after folding, Kenny's just going to have the immediate position on Mizrachi and like a really nice sort of stack distribution where he's just, except for when he's in the small blind and Mizrachi's on the button, he's just in position every time. And I don't know what Kenny was thinking, but that's certainly possible that that's one of the things he was thinking, and certainly something that I would be thinking about as well. All right. So again, if you are watching this live, we're going to keep going. If you are not watching this live and you're watching this on the free YouTube, then the rest of this webinar is going to live forever on the GTO Lab website under a pro subscription.